Right now, someone somewhere in the world is experiencing the exact same difficult circumstances as you. The same loss, the same illness, the same betrayal, the same failure. But here's what's strange. One person is absolutely destroyed by it, drowning in suffering that seems endless. And the other person, facing the identical situation, experiences pain, but moves through it with remarkable resilience and even finds meaning in it. What's the difference? The Buddha discovered something that modern psychology is only now beginning to understand. There's a profound distinction between pain and suffering, and most people spend their entire lives confusing the two. Pain is inevitable. It's part of having a body and a heart. It's what happens when you get sick, when you lose someone, when circumstances don't go your way. But suffering, the Buddha taught, is optional. Suffering is what your mind adds on top of pain. It's the story, the resistance, the endless "why me?" and "this shouldn't be happening." And here's the revolutionary part. While you have limited control over pain, you have almost complete control over suffering. The Buddha's entire teaching can be summarized in one sentence. I teach one thing and one thing only: suffering and the end of suffering. By the end of this guide, you'll understand exactly how your mind creates suffering, why you do it unconsciously, and most importantly, how to stop adding suffering on top of the unavoidable pain of being human.
Part 1. The mechanics of how your mind creates suffering. Let's start with a direct experience. Think about the last time you felt physical pain. Maybe you stubbed your toe, had a headache, or pulled a muscle. Now notice something crucial. The actual physical sensation, the raw data of pain coming from nerve endings, probably lasted seconds or minutes. But how long did you suffer about it? You probably complained, either out loud or internally. You probably got frustrated. You might have catastrophized, wondering if something was seriously wrong. You might have blamed yourself for being careless, or blamed someone else for causing the situation. You might have worried about how this would affect your day. All of that mental activity, that's suffering. And it can go on for hours or days, long after the actual physical pain has faded. The Buddha observed this pattern with extraordinary precision. He noticed that pain itself is just sensation, pure information from the body or emotions. But the moment pain arises, the untrained mind does something automatic. It starts resisting. It starts narrating. And in that resistance and narration, suffering is born. Here's how the process unfolds in real time. First, there's contact. Something happens. An unpleasant sensation arises. A difficult emotion appears, or circumstances turn painful. This is pain. This is unavoidable. It's part of being alive in a body, in a world where things change, and not everything goes according to your preferences. Second, there's feeling tone. The mind immediately categorizes the experience as unpleasant. This happens automatically, beneath conscious awareness. It's a survival mechanism. The mind flags potential threats. Third, and this is where suffering begins, craving arises. Not craving for something you don't have, but craving for this pain to be different than it is. Craving for it to stop. Craving for it to have never started. Craving for reality to be other than what it currently is. Fourth, mental proliferation begins. This is what the Buddha called papancha, the mind's tendency to spin elaborate stories. Why is this happening to me? This is unfair. I can't handle this. What if this never ends? I must have done something to deserve this. Other people don't have to deal with this. My life is ruined. None of these thoughts is the pain itself. They're all additions. They're suffering that you are creating in response to pain.
Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine two people both lose their jobs on the same day. Person A experiences the pain of job loss. uncertainty about the future, worry about finances, disappointment about career trajectory. These are unavoidable, painful feelings that arise from the situation. But person A's mind stays with the present moment reality. They feel the discomfort fully, but don't add layers of story on top. They think, this is difficult. I'm feeling anxious. I need to figure out next steps. That's pain without excessive suffering. Person B experiences the exact same initial pain, but then their mind goes into overdrive. I'm a failure. I'll never find another job. Everyone will think I'm incompetent. I'm going to lose everything. My life is over. I'm too old to start again. This always happens to me. I should have seen this coming. Now I'll end up homeless. My family will be ashamed. This spiraling, catastrophic narrative can go on for weeks or months. That's suffering. And notice, the external situation is identical. The difference is entirely in how the mind responds to pain.
The Buddha taught that this pattern, this automatic addition of suffering onto pain, is so deeply conditioned that most people don't even realize they're doing it. It feels like the suffering is caused by the circumstances. It feels like the pain and the suffering are one thing, but they're not. Pain is sensation and emotion arising from conditions. Suffering is the mind's resistance to and story about those sensations and emotions. And here's what makes this teaching so powerful. While you often can't control whether pain arises, you have enormous control over whether you add suffering on top of it. This doesn't mean you become numb or indifferent. It means you learn to meet pain with presence and clarity rather than resistance and narrative. You feel the grief when someone dies, but you don't add the suffering of, I shouldn't have to feel this way, or this pain means something is wrong with me. You feel the physical sensation of illness, but you don't add the suffering of, why is my body betraying me? Or I'll never feel healthy again. The pain remains. Pain is part of life. But the suffering, the torture your mind adds through resistance and story, that can dissolve.
Part 2. The 3 forms of suffering. The Buddha didn't just observe that we create unnecessary suffering. He categorized suffering into 3 distinct types, and understanding these categories is like getting a diagnostic manual for your own mind. The first type of suffering is dukkha dukkha, which translates as obvious suffering, or the suffering of suffering. This is the suffering everyone recognizes: physical pain, illness, injury, the grief of loss, the anxiety of fear, the burn of humiliation. These are the experiences that obviously hurt, and no one would argue they're pleasant. But here's what most people miss. Even with obvious suffering, there are layers. There's the raw experience itself, and then there's how much you amplify it through resistance. 2 people with the same chronic pain condition can have radically different relationships to their pain. One fights it constantly, resents it, makes it mean something terrible about their life. Their suffering is immense. Another learns to observe the pain with less resistance, less story. They still have pain, but their suffering is dramatically reduced. This is why mindfulness practices can help chronic pain patients, not because the pain disappears, but because the suffering around the pain decreases.
The second type of suffering is viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is more subtle, and most people don't recognize it as suffering until you point it out. This is the suffering that comes from the impermanence of pleasant experiences. You have a wonderful vacation, and even while you're enjoying it, there's a subtle anxiety because you know it will end. You fall in love, and underneath the joy is a fear of loss. You achieve success, and mixed with the satisfaction is a worry about maintaining it or losing it. You eat a delicious meal, and the pleasure is tinged with the sadness that it's almost finished. This type of suffering comes from clinging to experiences that are by their nature temporary.
You want the pleasant moment to last forever. You want to hold on to the feeling. But everything changes, and your desperate grasping at impermanent phenomena creates a constant low-grade suffering that permeates even your happiest moments. Think about how often you ruin a good experience by worrying about when it will end. You're on vacation, but you're already dreading going back to work. You're with someone you love, but you're already afraid of losing them. You accomplish something meaningful, but you're already anxious about what comes next. That's the suffering of change, and it's entirely self-created through the attempt to make permanent what is by nature impermanent.
The third and most profound type of suffering is sankhara dukkha, often translated as the suffering of conditioned existence or pervasive suffering. This is the most subtle and the most important to understand. This is the suffering that comes from having a constructed self, from being a separate individual navigating a world of separation. Even when you're not in obvious pain, even when pleasant experiences aren't ending, there's a baseline level of unsatisfactoriness to existence, a subtle sense that something is not quite right, not quite complete, a vague feeling of incompleteness that drives you to constantly seek something more, something different, something else. This suffering is built into the very structure of how you experience reality as a separate self. Because as a separate self, you're always lacking something. You're always vulnerable. You're always trying to maintain your sense of identity, defend your territory, secure your position. There's never a moment of complete rest, because the separate self is a construction that requires constant maintenance. Think about it. Even on a perfect day when nothing is obviously wrong, don't you still feel a subtle restlessness? A sense that you should be doing something, becoming something, achieving something? That's sankhara dukkha. And the Buddha taught that this form of suffering can only end through the realization of no self, through seeing that the separate entity you think you are is itself a construction.
These three types of suffering nest inside each other. The obvious suffering sits on top. Below that is the suffering of change, affecting even your pleasant experiences. And below that is the pervasive suffering of conditioned existence itself. And most people only work on the first level. They try to avoid obvious pain and pursue obvious pleasure. But the Buddha taught that real liberation requires understanding all three levels. You need to learn to meet obvious suffering without adding resistance and story. You need to learn to enjoy pleasant experiences without clinging and fear of loss. And ultimately, you need to see through the illusion of the separate self that creates pervasive suffering in the first place. This is why the Buddha's teaching is so much more radical than simple pain management or positive thinking. He's not teaching you how to rearrange your circumstances to minimize pain. He's teaching you how to completely transform your relationship to experience itself so that even unavoidable pain no longer creates suffering.
Part 3. The second arrow. The Buddha gave a teaching that perfectly illustrates the difference between pain and suffering. He called it the parable of the two arrows. He said, when an untrained person experiences pain, it's as if they've been struck by an arrow. That's the first arrow. It hurts. It's unpleasant. But this is just pain. It's unavoidable. Life includes illness, loss, disappointment, physical discomfort. These are the first arrows, and they're part of being alive in a body in an impermanent world. But then, the untrained person immediately shoots themselves with a second arrow. This second arrow is their reaction to the first arrow. They resist the pain, they complain about it, they catastrophize about it, they make it mean something about themselves or their life. They create elaborate stories about why it's happening and what it means. This second arrow is suffering. And the tragedy is that most people wound themselves far more deeply with the second arrow than they were wounded by the first.
Let me show you how this works in everyday life. Imagine you make a mistake at work. That's the first arrow. It's uncomfortable. You feel embarrassment, maybe some anxiety about consequences. That's pain. It's unpleasant, but manageable. But then, instead of just experiencing that discomfort and moving on, your mind starts shooting second arrows. I'm so stupid. Everyone must think I'm incompetent. I'm going to get fired. I never do anything right. I don't deserve this job. Why do I always mess things up? I'm a failure. My career is ruined. Each of these thoughts is another arrow, and collectively they create suffering that's far worse than the original mistake. You could be suffering about this mistake for days or weeks, long after anyone else has even remembered it happened. Or think about physical pain. You wake up with a headache. That's the first arrow. It's an unpleasant sensation. But then come the second arrows. Why do I always get headaches? This is ruining my whole day. I can't function like this. What if this is something serious? I probably caused this by staying up too late. I should have taken better care of myself. Now everything I planned is ruined. This isn't fair. Other people don't have to deal with this. Each thought amplifies the suffering. You're not just dealing with head pain anymore. You're dealing with frustration, resentment, anxiety, self-judgment, and catastrophic thinking. The Buddha's insight was that while you can't always avoid the first arrow, you can absolutely stop shooting yourself with the second arrow. And this changes everything. Because most of your suffering doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from your resistance to and stories about circumstances. Here's how second arrows typically show up. The first form is resistance. This shouldn't be happening. This isn't fair. This is wrong. I shouldn't have to experience this. Every one of these thoughts is resistance to what is already happening, and resistance creates suffering because you're trying to fight reality. You're creating inner conflict between how things are and how you think they should be. That conflict is exhausting and painful, but it's also completely optional. The pain is already here. The resistance adds suffering on top of it. The second form is catastrophizing. This is going to last forever. This will ruin everything. I can't handle this. Things are only going to get worse. This means everything is falling apart. Your mind takes the current moment of pain and projects it into an imagined catastrophic future. But that future doesn't exist. You're creating additional suffering in the present moment about pain that hasn't happened and may never happen.
The third form is self-judgment. I caused this. I deserve this. I'm weak for feeling this way. I should be stronger. Everyone else handles things better than I do. There's something wrong with me. You take the pain and make it evidence of your fundamental deficiency. You weaponize it against yourself. This creates layers of suffering on top of the original pain. Not only do you have the difficulty itself, but now you have shame, guilt, and self-attack. The fourth form is comparison and victimhood. Why does this happen to me? Other people have it so much easier. Life is unfair to me specifically. I'm uniquely cursed or unlucky. You take your individual experience of pain and make it evidence that you're being singled out by existence for special suffering. This creates a narrative of victimhood that actually increases your suffering because you're now fighting not just the pain, but also the perceived injustice of your situation. All of these are second arrows. And the remarkable thing is that once you learn to recognize them, you can choose not to shoot them. This doesn't require years of practice. It can start happening immediately once you understand the mechanism.
Part 4. The practice of meeting pain without creating suffering. So, how do you actually stop shooting second arrows? How do you meet pain without creating suffering? The Buddha gave specific practical instructions, and they all center on one core capacity: the ability to be present with experience without resistance or elaboration. The first step is learning to distinguish between pain and the story about pain. When difficulty arises, pause. Feel the raw sensations in your body. Notice the emotions present. This is pain, pure information from your nervous system and heart. Then notice the thoughts. Notice the narrative your mind wants to spin. This is where suffering begins. Just by making this distinction,
By seeing the difference between the experience and the story about the experience, you create space. And in that space, you have a choice. You can follow the story into suffering, or you can stay with the bare experience of pain without elaboration. Let me give you a concrete example. You receive criticism from someone. First arrow. There's an immediate feeling in your body, maybe tightness in your chest, maybe heat in your face, maybe a sinking feeling in your stomach. There's an emotional response, maybe hurt, maybe shame, maybe anger. This is pain. It's unpleasant, but it's just sensation and emotion. Now watch what your mind wants to do. It wants to create a story. They're wrong about me. They don't understand me. Everyone is against me. I'm no good. I should defend myself. I need to prove them wrong. This is all second arrows. Instead of following these thoughts, you can stay with the bare experience. I notice tightness in my chest. I notice a feeling of hurt. I notice thoughts arising about what this means. But I don't have to believe the thoughts or follow them. I can just feel what's here without making it into a drama.
The second step is replacing resistance with acceptance. This doesn't mean you like the pain or you want it to continue. It means you acknowledge that right now, in this moment, this is what's present. Fighting against what's already happening creates suffering. Accepting what's already happening, while still taking appropriate action to address it, eliminates a huge amount of unnecessary suffering. The Buddha taught a simple but profound question to ask yourself: is this situation helped by my resistance to it? Usually, the answer is no. Your resistance to being sick doesn't make you heal faster. Your resistance to feeling sad doesn't make the sadness go away. Your resistance to having a difficult conversation doesn't make the conversation unnecessary. So the resistance itself serves no function except to create additional suffering. Acceptance looks like this: I have a headache. That's what's true right now. I don't like it, but resisting it doesn't help. I can take appropriate action to address it, taking medicine, resting, staying hydrated, but I don't need to add the suffering of why me or this is ruining everything. The pain is enough. I don't need to add suffering on top. Or I'm feeling anxious. That's what's present. I can acknowledge the anxiety without making it mean something terrible about me or my life. I can feel the sensations of anxiety in my body without believing all the catastrophic thoughts anxiety generates. The feeling is uncomfortable, but I can be with discomfort without creating a crisis. The third step is learning to stay in the present moment, rather than projecting into imagined futures. So much suffering comes from living in your head, rehearsing possible scenarios, worrying about what might happen. But those scenarios exist only in thought. They're not happening now. And your suffering about them is suffering about something that doesn't exist. Whenever you notice yourself suffering, check: am I suffering about what's actually happening right now? Or am I suffering about a story I'm telling myself about the past or future? If you're suffering about the past, you're adding suffering about something that no longer exists. If you're suffering about the future, you're adding suffering about something that doesn't yet exist and may never exist. The only thing that actually exists is this present moment. And when you come back to what's actually true right now, you often find that this moment itself, separated from your thoughts about past and future, is manageable. Even if it's uncomfortable, you can handle this breath, this sensation, this moment. It's the thoughts about 1,000 other moments that create unbearable suffering. The fourth step is self-compassion rather than self-judgment. When pain arises, your instinct might be to judge yourself for feeling it, or to judge yourself for having caused it. But this judgment is another second arrow. Instead, you can meet yourself with the same compassion you'd offer a dear friend. Of course this hurts. Of course I'm struggling. This is difficult, and it makes sense that I'm having a hard time. I can be kind to myself while I move through this. This shift from judgment to compassion doesn't make you weak or self-indulgent. It actually makes you more resilient. Because when you're not fighting yourself on top of fighting circumstances, you have much more energy available to actually address the situation.
Self-compassion also includes recognizing that pain is part of the human experience. You're not uniquely cursed or specially targeted. You're experiencing what all humans experience. Connection to common humanity reduces the sense of isolation that often makes suffering worse. You can remind yourself, this is hard, and I'm not alone in finding it hard. Everyone experiences pain. Everyone struggles. This is what it means to be human. That recognition creates a sense of shared experience that's actually comforting.
Part 5. The liberation that comes from seeing clearly. When you truly understand the difference between pain and suffering, when you begin to see in real time how your mind creates suffering through resistance and story, something profound begins to shift. You realize that you've been making your life much harder than it needs to be. Not because you're deficient or broken, but because you were never taught this distinction. You were never shown how your mind works and how to work with it skillfully. The Buddha's promise is extraordinary. He's not promising that you'll never experience pain. He's promising that you can be free from suffering even while pain is present. And this freedom is available not someday in the distant future after decades of meditation, but potentially right now, in any moment when you bring clear seeing to your experience. The practice is simple but profound. When pain arises, feel it fully without resistance. When thoughts arise about the pain, see them as thoughts, not facts. When the impulse to shoot second arrows arises, pause. You don't have to follow that impulse. You can choose presence over proliferation, acceptance over resistance, compassion over judgment. And gradually, with practice, you discover something incredible. Life still includes difficulties.
Bodies still get sick. Relationships still end. Plans still fall through. But you're not suffering about all of it the way you used to. You're meeting life with more resilience, more clarity, more peace. Not because you've become numb, but because you've learned to stop adding suffering on top of inevitable pain. This is what the Buddha meant when he said he teaches suffering and the end of suffering. He's not teaching you to transcend the human condition. He's teaching you to meet the human condition with wisdom and compassion, so that even when life is difficult, you're not making it worse through resistance and story. This is liberation, not escape from pain, but freedom from unnecessary suffering. And it's available to you right now, not through years of study or achievement, but through the simple practice of meeting each moment with presence and seeing clearly how your mind creates suffering so you can choose not to. The pain of being human is inevitable. The suffering you add on top is optional. And that difference, when you truly understand it, changes everything.